The discovery of a new piece of evidence renews hopes that a decades-old cold case can be solved. This is the unsolved murder of Gary Grant Jr. Let's step into the cold. Gary Grant Sr. was no stranger to death. It was a routine part of his job as a detective in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So when he arrived at a vacant lot that had been cordoned off, nothing seemed unusual on the surface. But on that particular day, Gary Sr. had to be held back. The body found in the vacant lot was that of his son, Gary Grant Jr. Gary Grant Jr. was only 7 years old when he was killed. On the 12th of January 1984, Gary Jr. and other children in the city were given the day off school so that their teachers could attend a conference. Gary Jr. had plans for that day, as he explained to his mother, May, at breakfast. First he planned to play outside, and then, at 2:30 p.m, he had to attend an appointment, the details of which had to be kept a secret. When he left the family home at lunchtime, he told his mother he would be back at 4 p.m. That time soon came and went. May headed out to a house where she knew 2 of her son's friends lived. They told her that they hadn't seen Gary Jr. since he left at 4:30 p.m. to go home. After 2 hours passed by, May became increasingly alarmed. She called her husband, Gary Grant Sr., a detective. Given his job, he would know what to do. Gary Sr. immediately took the night off work and began searching near the family home until the early hours of the morning. By the next morning, the police officially became involved in the search for the little boy. Regulations prevented the boy's father from joining the official search, but this didn't stop Gary Sr. from investigating independently. Several people told him that they'd seen Gary Jr. the day he went missing. When local man Robert Hewley realised that Gary Jr. had vanished close to a warehouse he owned, he thought it wise to check his property. On the 14th of January, he found Gary Jr.'s body in a vacant lot close to his warehouse. Gary Jr. had been bludgeoned to death with a short, heavy pipe, and the murder weapon was found near his body. Gary Jr. had been found less than 2 blocks from his home. After the discovery of Gary's body, the police enforced a radio silence until Gary's family could be notified. But given the close proximity of the crime scene to the Grant family home, it didn't take long for Gary Sr. to stumble across the scene as he searched for his son, independently of the official investigation. That same day, the police began questioning people in the area. Someone mentioned that they had seen Gary Jr. on the day he disappeared, near the local middle school. Gary Jr. was with his friend, 12-year-old Carl Boo Mason. Carl was developmentally disabled and had an IQ of 65. Despite being older than Gary, he was smaller in height and weight. The police questioned Carl, who said he'd last seen Gary Jr. the day before he vanished. They had been riding their bikes at Texas Avenue Park. The friends made plans to meet up again the next day, but Gary Jr. never showed up. At midnight, Carl, accompanied by his grandmother, was taken to the police headquarters. He was questioned alone. The police felt his responses to their questions weren't consistent. By 3 a.m, Carl said he had been with Gary at the scene of the crime and that he had hit his friend. Carl left the scene when Gary fell and didn't get back up. According to the police, Carl knew things only the killer would know. The police typed up a confession for Carl and his grandmother to sign. Carl signed the confession while insisting he hadn't killed his friend. He was then charged with murder and he was sent to a juvenile detention centre. Carl later had this to say about being charged with a crime. "I did not have anything to do with his murder. The one cop said if you admit you did it, we'll let you go home. So me at the age of 12, I was so tired, I said, if you say so, but I didn't. Then the next thing I knew, I winded up in a home." Carl underwent 2 polygraph tests, with the first having inconclusive results. Both tests felt that Carl was telling the truth about not killing Gary Jr., but doubted that he was telling the truth about not being at the crime scene. After a month passed by, a hearing was held, where it was determined that Carl's confession wasn't admissible as evidence, as his statements hadn't been made voluntarily. The charges against Carl were dropped. Gary Sr. theorised that Carl's older brother, who was arrested on robbery charges only days before his son was killed, may have tried to force Gary Jr. into taking part in a scheme where he used children to rob houses. Gary Jr. refused to take part and possibly mentioned going to the police, leading to his murder. Then, a couple of years later, the eerie messages started. On the 4th of January 1986, a message was found scrawled on the side of a police car at 3 a.m. It read, "Gary Grant is dead. I am living. Another will die on the 12th of the 1st, 86, if all goes right." A few weeks after the first message appeared, another one was found, this time written on a sidewalk. It read, "Gary Grant Jr. lives. I still killed him. Son of a pig officer. Payback is a MF." Gary Sr. felt that the messages had been written by an adult. A possible lead in the case came in late 2015. Although he is now retired, Gary Sr. is still independently investigating his son's murder. As he was going through the process of converting old audio tapes to MP3, he came across a tape named Phone Calls. Gary Sr. played the tape and was shocked to hear a 911 call from a man trying to claim a reward on himself for Gary Jr.'s murder. The call was made on what would have been Gary's 10th birthday, the 8th of March 1986. What follows next is the real 911 call.
Police and fire.
Yes. Is it possible for me to collect the reward on my own self for the murder of Gary Grant? No, well, how's if I did it myself and I want to collect the own reward?
If you did it?
Yeah.
Well, suppose I hook you into the Detective Bureau.
No, it's okay.
I mean, that's only you.
Make sure they know it's not a crank call. You'll never be able to catch them.
Another 911 call was made a few months later on the 2nd of June. When asked for his name, the male caller won't give his name. Instead, he gives the name of a man he says confessed to Gary Jr.'s murder. The caller also says, quote, "He told me he killed Gary Grant Jr. because of the father. The cops know what he looks like." End quote. Gary Sr. remembers that this man lived in his patrol area, but he never had any issues with him. Will these 911 calls lead to a breakthrough in the case? That remains to be seen. But the local community started asking one question in particular. Was Gary Jr. killed as revenge against his father?